First of all, I'm not a speaker, I'm a talker. So what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about some things I think will interest you. And I'll start by telling you a story about a cabin I did recently up on the Mobile Bay Delta. And when the young man brought it in to me to draw from him, he gave me a list of his requirements. And after I read them, I said, if I do what you want me to do, your wife will never go to your hunting camp. He said, promise me. So there are all sorts of things that I hear in my practice. First of all, this is not a cabin. First of all, that's Anita. Anita's my wife. We've been married over 52 years. And she's run my office since the day I opened the door, since the day I got registered. So we see a lot of each other. This is not a cabin, but this is the reason that the cabin collection came about. I was asked by International Paper Realty Corporation of South Carolina to do some design work and master planning work at Defusky Island, South Carolina, on a development there called Hake Point. If any of you golfers, you may have been there. You can only get to Defusky Island by boat, and so anything you build over there is a little bit complicated. Although recently I've designed a harbor to go over there to bring things in and out. When we started working on that, I'd restored the lighthouse and had it replaced on the registry of lighthouses. I think that was the first one that had been done in a long time. And then I did a condominium complex that looked like plantation homes. And then I did individual homes to seed the project. When we do a master plan or development, we do the guidelines and restrictive covenants, but we also try to seed the development so people who get the guidelines but don't really go through them can go out and look at a house or a building and say, yeah, I understand what you want us to do. So I got a phone call from them and they said, look, we want you to go look at a house on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. I was about to do a reception center, bed and breakfast kind of restaurant for IP, where people, when they came aboard and came to Defusky, they had a place to stay, to visit, to eat while the development was going on. So they called and said, look, we'd like for you to go to St. Simon's and look at a house that's for sale there for $1. Oh. Now the problem is it's a large house and a lot of people have tried to figure out how to move it. And if you can figure out how to move it, then we'll buy it for $1 and we'll use that. We'll bring it to Defusky Island. That was the house. And this perspective up top is the way we envisioned it as being restored. The bottom is as it was being loaded onto barges. We had a short window of time to get together the crews to move this. There were, of course, house movers, the barge people. The barges we call mated barges. They were same displacement. They interlocked. And we had to bring one in from Maine and one from New Orleans. I think it was about halfway up the coast. And we were able to get the crews together and get them to sign on board. And during that time, we were able to get the state of Georgia, the state of South Carolina, and federal approval to move this house. Now, this is what the move looked like. This is when we were clearing out under it. My brother and I, my brother was a structural engineer. We crawled around under this house and we found lots of green spiders. I didn't really like that. Yes. And we were covered up with no seals. These are the mated barges. You can see where they locked together. And it pulled up, and then we were moving this off onto the barges. We decided we could move it by water. We knew why they could move it by land. It was over 50 feet tall and had a big footprint, as you'll see later. So when we agreed we would do this, we all held our breath for the period of time that it moved. About 2.5 days from the time we rolled it off of St. Simon's until we rolled it on to Defusky. This is when we were backing it off of St. Simon's, and that's it on the barges. And this is called a steering barge. So it's being pushed, but because of tight quarters, the barge could direct that house left and right. It made ABC International News and was called the biggest houseboat in the world. It was pretty big. That's my brother sitting on top of the house, on the peak of the house. When we went under Thunderbolt Bridge, we had 6 inches clearance on each side between the bollards. And we had 1.5 to 3.5, depending on who you believe, overhead. My brother says it was 1.5 because he had to climb down a little off the ridge to get under there. But you can see the people lined up watching this go under that bridge. This is when it sailed the last night before it came ashore. That's just before they anchored. The next morning they brought it in, and we had built these ramps to receive it. The problem is there's 9 feet of tidal action, and so we had to arrange it when the barges were pushed up. We had to be able to roll the front tires off. That meant the barge would go back up. We had a 20-minute window to roll the second set off. The barge would go back up 20 minutes, and that's how we got it off. Not one crack in the plaster. Wow. And we moved the chimney, not on the top. We knew it wouldn't clear. But we knocked it down to the roof, but the main fireplace and chimney below was moved intact. And it had beautiful tiles, and they didn't crack either. So when we got there, we were very lucky. I won't tell you about our financial deal. It was pretty good. If we got it there, it was a nice bonus, and if we didn't, I owned that house. So I didn't sleep a lot. Okay, when we rolled it off, that's where we were moving it. That's the site that the house was going to go in. And these are the ramps viewed from up on the house up there. Now you can see it coming down. When we got it on ground, that's when it's coming off that. Now this is what it looked like when we left it sitting there. This is as it was restored later. But this is where it took kind of an interesting turn for me and for you. We all left the island and we went to the quarterdeck bar. That's in Harbor Town at Hilton Head. And we're sitting around and you could hear people breathing for the first time in 3 days. And my wife and I, Anita was sitting here, I was sitting here, and a young guy came up by us and he said, "Mr. Phillips, you do these beautiful homes for these rich people. When are you going to do something for us poor folks?" And I said, "Son, those poor folks are sitting having a drink." He said, "No, I'm serious." He said, "I can buy a nice boat, I can buy a trailer, but I can't buy a house, and I can't build a house." I said, "Are you able to build?" "Well, yeah." "Are you married?" "Yes." "Do you have any children?" "No." "Okay. Can she handle tools?" "Yes." Can you hammer saw? Can you use hammers and saws and whatever?" "Yeah." And I said, "Okay. Do you have a pickup truck?" Now that was a dumb question. Everybody on that crew that moved that house, all of them had pickup trucks. It looked like a sea of pickup trucks in the parking lot. He said, "I've got a pickup truck." I said, "Okay." And I said, "I'll need some data. Sit down, have a drink." And I got the bartender to bring some napkins, fairly nice size, fairly stable napkins. And for the next hour, hour and a half, I drew him a house. Freehand, to a reasonable scale, with dimensions, foundation plan, floor plan, exterior elevations, a section through it, and then we discussed all of the materials. And that's what we're going to do some a little later today, discuss materials that you can use in a cabinet. But he was good to work with, and it was pretty quick. And when I finished with the drawings, I gave them to him. Of course, he thanked me, and he went his way. And I turned around, and Anita said, "That's a very nice thing you just did for that young man." I said, "Thank you." she said, and it's the first building in a new collection you're going to do called a cabin collection. And that's where this all came to. If it had not been for that, the cabin collection may or may not have been done. That's the first cabin I did for that. It's 20 by 20. Now, why is that important? Plywood is in 4 by 8 sheets. 20 by 20 seems to work very nicely. You have a half a sheet left over, and you use that for bridging or blocking or whatever you need. The studs were all standard lengths. I don't remember in the one I sketched for him if it had 8-foot ceilings or 9s. I don't like 8-foot ceilings, but I may have done those for him. It would have been easier to handle. And they would have been 2 by 4s then. Nowadays, all exterior walls and bearing walls, we do 2 by 6s. But he didn't have to cut any of the studs, and the floor joists could be lapped at a center bearing point, so he didn't have to cut the joists. And we did the pitch on the roof so that the rafters worked out exactly right. So he didn't have to cut the rafters. So I sat and played with this and figured out the way I could do this, the easiest for him, which also meant the least expensive for him. He could have hauled a scrap off from this little cabin in his pickup truck. So normally they do that with a big dumpster or a dump truck. No. So the only thing in it that was sort of out of his league was the fireplace that I added. And you can see that this is an alcove. It's a sleeping alcove. That's the kitchen. There's a little dining area right there, bathroom right there with a shower, and closets first closed, fireplace, front and rear porches. The front and rear porches, we designed them so they could be added later. And again, they were standard dimensions. So he could build this, move in, and he could add the porches as he saw fit. As you can see, there's sheds that work off of, on his they were a little different. I ran the ridge left and right, and I shedded the porches off. Here I turned the ridge and put the sheds in, but I had taller ceilings to work with. So anyway, that's how the cabin collection started. Then the cabins are a hobby with me. And I've done houses the same way. If I have an idea and I don't have a client, I've always got a sketch pad. And I will make sketches of something that I think would really be good, but I don't have a client for it. And I give it to Anita and she files it. And then when I got enough of them, she begins to feed them back to me and say, okay, I like this one, do it first. Okay, now you do this one. Well, in this one, I did probably 3 or 4, and then business was busy and I had to turn my back on the collection a little bit. And finally she walked in. Let's click. Go 1 more or 2 more. That. She walked, that one. She walked in and said, okay, this is a clipping. It was an artist's work in a magazine. And she handed it to me and said, I really like this cabin. I want it to be the next one you do, and you're going to do it for me. Okay? And she said, furthermore, I want you to do it now. So I did this cabin, and we ultimately built it in Arkansas in a development that I did up there, and we kept it for years. But I'll show you the interior of that later because it's kind of fun. It shows you what you can do inside to make these things really exciting. So that's the one, again, that spurred this on. Kitchen, entry, dining room, back porch, great room or living room, and powder room under the stairs, and then upstairs, bedroom, stacked washer and dryer, closets, and then a walk through and another closet beyond. Bathroom was kind of unique because we did the vanity right here in an alcove, my light shades. And here's the rest of the bathroom. So we're able to compartmentalize this and make it work. To design cabins, you should have lived on a boat because you'll learn that everything has a place and everything that's removed from that place is put back in that place. And also you learn how to let one area flow into another area and make both areas seem bigger. Same thing here. The foyer goes into the kitchen, goes into the dining room, into the living room. And one of my granddaughter said, "Big Daddy." She said, "Big Daddy, the most I remember when I was a little girl was being at the cabin and sitting on your lap in front of that fireplace." She said that was as comfortable as you could ever be. So I'll remember that. There are all sorts of forms to these, and all of them begin to make sense after you look at them for a while. If you're going to design a cabin, first, look at the site. Look where you're going to put it. If there's a lake, you're lucky. If there's something worth looking at, you're lucky. But if you go to the area where you want to build it and look around and determine how you want it to face, maybe it's on a hillside. And we've done some of these that have walkout basements. I don't think I put them in there. But we've got some that are walkout basements. But if you look at the site, then do something else. Test the soil. And I emphasize this to the people that build cabins. And a lot of them sort of build them themselves about 6 months ago, maybe less. A young man that I'd done some commercial work for and things in the past was going to build a hunting lodge, and he came to me and said, "I've got a sketch and this is what I want to do." And I said, "Fine." And he said, I said, "But the pilings, you got pilings in the wrong place. The loads don't come down there." He said, "Well, I've already put the pilings in." And I said, "Well, you're going to add some more because we're going to pick up some loads." And he had taken auger that you put in a post with, big post, and had drilled down to what he swears was good bearing soil. I'm not sure that they even know what that was. What you want to do if you're going to build a cabin, you can dig down and you can look. But if you're going to put any kind of load on it, take time to get any geotech engineer. Doesn't cost a fortune. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. $1,500, $2,000, that he will take test borings and determine what's under you. You don't want to build over a landfill, a new one or an old one, and you don't want to build over stumps and roots and things. So this will determine whether or not you've got competent bearing down below. After that's established, then the loads or the pilings can be established. And from there it becomes framing. Again, the cabins look really good with taller windows. 8-foot ceilings, windows are at 6'8" normally. I think probably most of you know that. And windows are put even with the doors. That's when they're 6'8". But when you go to 9-foot ceilings, 7'4" is a good ceiling or window head height because it gives you more verticality, more light, makes it look better. You can use bigger windows too. Next, if you go to 10 foot, you want to put the window heads at 8 feet. Again, same reasons. More verticality, more light, really looks a lot better. Leaves you room for crown moldings and trim around the windows too, which is also nice. Let's talk finishes, interior finishes. No, I'll do that with the cabinet, the slides on my cabinet. Ceiling heights, roof pitches. Let's go to roof pitches. Most of the cabins have fairly steep roof pitches. The roofers don't like it, but the clients do. It looks better, and also it leaves you opportunity to put some space, some living space up in the attic, what would normally be the attic of the house. It's not free space, but it's pretty cheap as compared to the rest of the house. Materials. Exterior, this is important. Exterior can be board and batten, and you can use real wood, or you can use plywood sheets with batten strips over it, and then you can stain it. I don't like painting the cabins, but you can paint them, but you can put a gray stain over them too. I like the trim a different color or stain. You can use, heaven forbid, in front of people that are timber owners, you could use hardy board in sheets and then cover it with batten strips, and then that I would use a really dense stain over to kill that off. It's a good material to use if you're in the middle of nowhere because of fire resistance. So we have used it. In fact, I'll show you one where we used it. And it looks okay. Down deep, somehow it bothers me, but it does serve a purpose. If you read about the forest fires in California, there was one whole area where everything had burned but one house. Had a metal roof, had hardy board exterior, had 5/8 fire code gypsum board, fire rated sheetrock inside, and the windows of it were impact rated windows, so they didn't blow in or blow out. That's another thing about the windows in a cabin. If you're going to build in a place that's kind of remote, you want to look into impact rated windows and doors, because a 200-pound man with a sledgehammer would have a long time coming through a window. If a 2x4 fired out of a cannon won't go through it, a hammer won't go through it in a sledgehammer. So that's another thing to think about, depending upon where you're located in your cabin. Kitchens, let's talk kitchens a little bit. One of the things I like to make sure of is that the husband and wife are on the same page. Okay? Because they're not going to be happy, both of them, unless they are. So normally we get them to come in, sit at the table. I ask questions. They can take notes, very comfortable, and you can tell really quickly if they're on the same page or not. One of my questions is, are you a good cook? Now, if she says, yeah, and I look over at him and he's going, there's a difference of opinion in that. And so, in effect, I try it with everything. I want to get both ends of the conversation, okay? And make notes. What do you want to achieve? How many rooms do you want? What kind of rooms? How big? And again, if you're going to design it yourself, fine. But if you've got all the notes that you would give to an architect, then you're going to have a better cabin when you get through, if you do it yourself or whatever. Okay? Also, while I'm thinking of it, if you have questions about cabin design, anything, call me. I'll put some cards around and call me. Doesn't cost you. You'll get Anita on the phone and she'll interrupt me from whatever I'm doing and say there's somebody on here you ought to talk to, and that means we'll talk. And if you've got questions or good questions, we'll sit and talk about it. Okay? And if it's too complex, come to my office. It's fun to go to Dolphin Island anyway. So come down there, come to the studio, we'll sit there and talk. At any point it's going to cost you anything, you will know. I don't like surprises. So if it looks like you're going to go on for a week, we're going to talk. But if it's something that I can take care of, I will. Southern Living said, you're the only architect we have that will talk to people. That's how I like to talk. It's that easy. That's the best selling cabin you just clicked off of that Southern Living has ever had. And it's probably also the top selling house of any kind. They're built everywhere. And I love to, we go on a lot of trips and we go visit sites, and we have work in the Carolinas and Florida and Georgia and Alabama and Louisiana currently. And I love to, if I can drive to them, I'll do that. I can't fly. I'm sorry?
Deer Run.
Deer Run.
Deer Run. When Southern Living wanted me to bring the cabins up and show them to them. So I went to Birmingham. I have an agent with Southern Living that handles my collections of my work, individual work too. And I called her and said, look, I've got a collection I think you might be interested in. And she said, yeah, I think people might be interested in it too, bring them up here. So we went up and got in the conference room, and I passed out color renderings and little sketches of the floor plans. and passed them around, and the whole crowd had gathered, and they were looking at them, and all of a sudden they got them left. But they carried the drawings with them, but they all got them left. So Anita and I got up and got a cup of coffee and said, my agent had said, we'll be back. And so 20 minutes or more later, they came back, and she said, we want to publish this collection, and we want it as soon as you get it done, but we need 16 to make this collection. Something to do with publication costs or what, I don't know. So I had 14, and they needed 16. So on a whim, I decided I would do a church or a chapel. Now there's a reason for that. First of all, take the tower off, and it's a house, as shown over on the right with a regular front porch. With the tower on, it's a church. I got that idea because riding around the back roads of Alabama, I saw a lot of churches that had either been abandoned or were being lived in by young families. I don't know if they bought them, rented them, or just moved in, but I saw a lot of that. My wife is from Monroe County, lived on a farm there for a long time. Well, until she met me. So she kind of liked that idea too, as long as it could make it mean something. Now it means a lot to me because our son was an architect. He died 6 years ago. One of these was built in a Lake Cumberland resort in Kentucky, and they named it, dedicated it to our son. So everything sort of got this circle. Let's do it. That is a dog trot. You all know what dog trots are. That's an old dog trot. We got it sort of the same way, riding around and looking, taking photographs. Friends of mine from further north said, what is a dog? Where did they get that name? And I said the dog was in the center between the two pieces, and they could feed him scraps or what, and he could trot back and forth. That was a dog trot. Good conversation. Anyway, a lot of these have been built. Client lives in one side, grandchildren visit the other one. Client retires in one side, rents the other one. So these did a lot better than I thought they would. I just kind of didn't know that market. The whole market surprised me. I thought these were going to be second homes or cottages somewhere, and a lot of them became primary residences. And we're seeing some more of that right now, where people are saying, yeah, who knows what the economy is going to be, but we're going to be safe, and we're going to build this. So some of that going again, too. And we had very young people and older people and everything in between. That's also a duplex. We found that people that have lakes and want to build rental units around lakes, they don't want motel looks. They would rather have something that looked like cabins. So that's actually 2 units. And that perspective is the perspective of the rear of it. Doesn't have any rears, it's got 4 fronts. That was kind of a fun. These are all fun. Upstairs, in this one, a lot of them have a bedroom upstairs, a master's upstairs, and bathrooms. And they sold well, but input we got was people wanted a bedroom downstairs, and that they also wanted 1 more bedroom. So we started a second cabin collection. I got too many to bring, but second cabin collection. All of them had bedrooms downstairs, and maybe 1 down and 1 up, or 2 down. And that collection is done very well too. If I had another half hour, another day, I'd show you that. Some of these are really fun. And again, all of these we considered the sizes of materials, the lengths of spans, all that kind of good stuff. Also, it depends on where you're going to build them. Sewer becomes a problem. Water becomes a problem some places. Electrical service may become a problem. We've done these with this, I don't even like to say solar collectors, because I'm not sure I'm sold on the theory. It'll pay off in 14 years. you'll break even in 14 years. Before that, I'm not so sure. But there are septic systems now that work in almost any kind of soil. And they're not the old mound systems that look like somebody, well, they just look terrible. But you're trapped into it. But they make some now that are filtration, ground filtration systems that end in a little marsh area, and it purifies everything. So they're nice. I've done 2 over the last couple of years, and they work very well. Generation system, most of the people that are outlying camps put in generation systems, even if they have power service. Go one. Okay, it's similar bedroom. Go again. That is Yancey's Mill, and that's actually been built. That was one that we built in Arkansas. My client up there was my best friend in Arkansas. We did a lot of work together, and he called one day and said, I want to build the collection that you're doing for Southern Living. It had not been published. I know you're doing it, and I'd like to do these. And do you think that Southern Living would like to publish them? I said, I don't know. I'll find out. We built them, and this one, and one I did for Anita, and one I did for another friend of ours, were on the cover of the cabin collection, color photograph of the cabin collection. But that's one of them. I think that's a really neat thing. And the water will work on it. Okay? That's kind of fun. It's quirky though. It's got some strange things in it. Like the bedroom is upstairs, some storage upstairs. This is a balcony line. This is open to downstairs. But that's the only bath on the left. Didn't make sense when I looked at it. So I redid it, and I put a bathroom upstairs and some more storage upstairs, and that made it all together better. That's Watson's store. We needed 2 more. The church was one, and Watson's store was the other one. Okay? That was her grandfather's store in Bermuda, Alabama. Now, none of you know where that is, right? Oh, if you do. Well, then you know a Watson. That was her family name. Somebody asked me if I was coming home from Auburn and I ran out of gas, what I'd do. I said, well, if it was anywhere around Monroe County, I'd go to the nearest house, knock, and say, are you a Watson? And if they said no, I said, where does the nearest one live? So she's got some relatives there. But that was his old store, even down to the Coca-Cola sign on it, except the gas pumps outside. It was also a post office. I have the postal woodwork in storage. I keep saying I'm going to build a bar in it, but it never happens. So this turned out to be a nice one too. It's 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, kitchen, dining, and living. Now I did add a fireplace, a corner fireplace. That made it better. And then it's got a front porch and rear porch on the master. I assume this is a master closet. Walk through the master bath. So you can go out of the master bedroom, out onto the porch, and you can come out on the other one too. I finally screened one of them and left the other one over the porch. Okay? Now we can do, I don't know how we remember the time. You're going to start screaming.
Probably fine. Yeah, we should be fine. Should be good for
okay.
2 more minutes.
Just
we got 1 more speaker, so where's Les at?
Here, man. No, you said you could go on.
Yeah, I didn't know when you were going to start your night.
all you have to do is tell me to quit.
5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 more minutes. This was a development in Arkansas that I did that I told you about. These are the cabins that were in the collection. And if you want to just kind of click through.
Billy.
Oh, Billy.
Okay.
I'm going to get the interior.
There are 9 cabins in the first phase of this, and wound up being not one of all of the cabins, but most of them were built. You can click again.
Where in Arkansas would we?
Searcy, Arkansas. The, you know what that is?
Interior.
We want to see the interior.
Click.
Click, click, click.
He's winning.
That's the one I did for, that's the one I did for Anita. Click.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay. Now the ceilings in the one that I did for Anita, the ceilings are white pine, clear white pine. The floors are southern yellow pine. The walls, coming up here, I rode by 3 mills at least, sawmills, on Highway 43. I went to a sawmill and found some big logs in the yard and took them out the night morning. And I went inside and said, "Will you sell me these logs?" Well, yeah. He quoted me a price. I said, will you cut them up for me for that same price? Well, yeah, I guess so. They've been here a long time. He said, "I don't even know what they are." And I said, "Yeah, I know you know." So when he cut them, cut them in planks, and they were rough sawn, and then they were sawn down the center. So I had 2 rough surfaces, one surface on each board, rough, one smooth. Outside of that cabin's rough side out, sideways, rough side out. Inside, smooth side in. Okay. The floors are surface nailed with old black, wonderful little rose-headed nails. Look just like the old nail. The trim is S4X, square 4 sides, like 1x4 for window trim. Sometimes the head of the windows I do 1x6s. Door trim the same way. Click it. Notice that's powder room under the stairs. That's the for stone fireplace. Let's try one more. Yeah, see the doors were made there too, and they were double layers of wood with the seams staggered. And then on the face, the diagonals and horizontal boards, all of this was screwed through the wood. And
They might not hear you.
oh, I'm sorry. All of these were screwed through the wood to tie the doors into one piece. And they were glued as they were put together too. We never had any doors warp, and we never had any of them come apart. And they gave me the look I wanted. Now, I'm not sure this is legal, but that is the electrical panel. I put wood over it. Okay, sure looked good. And I knew where it was. Then I closed in the back screen porch, but that was a view out of the porch at the golf course and all over there. The back of this on the left was Gin Creek. Click. This is one I did in Missouri. Okay. And these people called and said, "We don't want one out of the collection. We want you to do us one. We're going to be on the lake. We'd like you to come up and take a look and design something for us." That's what we did. Click. That's a cabin I did in Alabama. The left half, it's a study in cost effectiveness. This is the first phase, that's the second phase. Turn out nice. Next.
What did you call it?
I'm sorry?
What did you call it?
Does it have a
I didn't name it.
Oh,
No,
it was a lesson in cost
I'm sorry.
It was a lesson in cost effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because you could build a half of it, or a little more than half, and have that, and then add the wing later as a master wing. And the master wing was self-contained totally. Air conditioned, air conditioned. This one is in Georgia, and this was our rendering. We do renderings for a lot of these before we build them. That's the way it turned out. There's a cabin here. That's the cabin.
Little add-on, huh?
And that's the cabin. And you look through glass at the front of that. This is one in Florida. I won't bore you with it, but there's a historic residence there. These are additions to it. It's on an island. We get there by boat. And this is the guardhouse, gatehouse at the dock to control who comes aboard the private island. That's it. Thank you.
All right.